Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tech.Strong.Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. I'm Jodi Ashley, executive producer here at Tech.Strong. I'm here with my co-host, Tracy Reagan, creator and CEO of Deploy Hub. And, in her free time, she's busy working with the Linux Foundation. And I say the free time, I don't know where she finds it, but she does. It's very impressive. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to give you a quick update about what's going on here at Tech.Strong. We just launched our newest site, Tech.Strong.AI. So be sure to go and check it out. There's all sorts of great content, interviews, and interesting articles out there for you to read and check out. We have a couple of virtual events coming up. You can also attend. August 16th is Data Ops Day, where we will take a deep dive into the world of data and data ops. You'll hear from data and business leaders who've adopted data ops to achieve their goals for quality, security, and speed. And on September 13th, we have a Digital CXO Summit. We're going to have a bunch of industry leaders who share insights that they've gained from their own digital transformation journeys and tips on how to become future-ready technology businesses that can sustain long-term growth. They'll also address common challenges that C-suite executives face in driving digital initiatives and provide practical strategies to overcome them. You can register for all of our events by going to techstrongevents.com and be sure to tune in every day to Tech.Strong TV for great shows and interviews. All right, Tracy, what's on your mind today?
Well, first of all, I think I really need to sign up for the CXO conference. Sounds awesome.
I'll make sure you get the link.
Okay. And, in the spirit of Tech.Strong AI, I thought I would touch base on AI. Regardless of what we think, I heard on the news, AI is going to take over humans, which could happen. Who knows? Stranger things, probably. But I really want our listeners to start learning more about about AI and the platforms out there to develop new software. We have in past years, we've always been promised this kind of quantum computing environment with a quantum computer. We haven't really seen it yet, but we have seen changes in the way we process data beyond just CPUs or GPUs, which are graphical processing units. So I want to shout out to tensor processing units, TPUs. These are essential. TPUs were introduced by Google. They would call them custom developed application specific integrated circuits. But the purpose of them is to accelerate machine learning workloads. Now, I first heard the term tensor. It's been quite some time that I heard that term, talking to some of my data friends, my data engineering friends who really started telling me, oh, this is something you should really be checking out. And I learned about TensorFlow, which is a tool that helps you build these machine learning workflows. But as we progress in this area and as we want to keep our careers frosty, I really want to encourage our listeners and viewers, since we're a podcast as well, to think about learning more about TPUs and understanding this new technology for AI. It will be important in the future, and we don't know if we'll ever see that quantum computer. It may come someday, but in the meantime, learn about TPUs. Nice.
Awesome. I always learn so much from your moments on our show. So thank you for sharing that. Well, I'm going to introduce you all to today's guest, Lynne Doherty. Lynne, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I'm Lynne Doherty. I am the president of go-to-market and worldwide field operations at Sumo Logic, which means that I run our sales team, our pre-sales engineering, our customer success, support professional services. So basically all things that touch customers here at Sumo Logic is what I'm responsible for. And just on Sumo Logic, we are an observability and security in the cloud SaaS provider. So we ensure applications are secure and reliable as the world moves to a digital and cloud-based environment.
Well, Lynn, we are super happy to have you. When I looked at your resume, I thought, well, people think I'm busy. You have a very busy resume too, and I want to start talking first about things outside of tech. You, I believe, are on some interesting boards. We individuals who are kind of type A, I guess, personalities tend to do a lot of volunteering. And I see that you are a board member of the American Red Cross.
Yeah, I am. And I'm really passionate about it. A few years ago, I moved to Washington, D.C., probably 10 years ago now. And American Red Cross is incredibly active in Washington, D.C., because of both it's a dense population, but also because of the service to military. And so I became involved with American Red Cross, and it's an amazing organization. I have a lot of passion around it, and I think it's also super important for all of us who are so fortunate in so many ways to do things that we can help community and individuals and make sure that we impact the world in a broader sense, not just in the day-to-day grind that we have with our jobs.
It's super for you. That's amazing that you do that, because I know, being on boards at the Linux Foundation, I know how time consuming that can be. And you really have to have a passion for this stuff to get involved. And so thank you for doing that. It kind of is a big deal in my mind. It's a really big deal.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I am super passionate about it. I think there's so many things that we can take for granted. I mean, American Red Cross is the largest responder to home fires, which is really something that people don't think about for American Red Cross. I think everybody thinks of when there's big disasters and, hurricanes and tornadoes and all of that, which that's absolutely a part of it. But on local levels, it's people who have fires at their home and get displaced. It's, the blood supply that saves lives is human blood is not something that's reproducible. We talk about AI. Human blood is something that's not reproducible. The only way you get that is through blood drives. And so without the American Red Cross, all of that doesn't happen. So thank you.
I was engaged with it a lot as a kid, and I forget about that until you brought it up. Like, I took babysitting classes and I took CPR and first aid, and I was involved in a lot of stuff when I was younger. And I sent my granddaughter off to get a babysitting class at the Red Cross because she's 13 and she wants to babysit. And I had no idea it was the largest organization for home fires. I mean, we think of giant disasters, right? And then we see it all over the news. But what it does in the communities itself is really a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know that until my partner, Steve Taylor, is a volunteer firefighter. And there was a pretty big fire locally. And I was like, what are they going to do? Where are they going to live? And he said, I don't know, but the American Red Cross will take care of it. And I was like, what? Really? They step in and get them a temporary place to live and help them out. And thank God for that, right? Thank God for organizations non-governmental organizations that do that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
So tell us, I have a niece that just graduated from Iowa State with a degree in computer science. And this is one of my pet peeves. It happens to a lot of women, but it didn't happen to you, or it didn't happen to me, it seems, is that as soon as they get out of college and university, they go into the workforce, and oftentimes women are pushed into project management positions, which are important, but you don't have to have an IT degree. You don't have to take all that time learning about computer science and programming to be a project manager. In fact, others may be more suitable for that. How did you keep your career from falling into that position?
It's a super interesting question, and it's interesting you bring up the project management. I think I've seen some of that, and I think I'm in this intersection of both frontline sales as well as tech. And so that Venn diagram gets even smaller when it comes to the representation of women in those environments. It's interesting. I came out of school not in kind of any way in the field that I'm in. I was a math and computer science major, and I started my career as a developer, an application developer. So it's sort of not the traditional path into becoming an executive leading a go-to-market team. I think part of it is having a real passion for the technology. So having a passion for technology, you don't want to get far from it. It was actually sort of when I went into a sales role from an engineering role, became a really hard part for me was letting some of the technology go. So I think starting with having the passion for technology, I think there's so many things that go into how do you build a successful career. And for young women, early on, finding mentors and building a network and having role models and people that they can look up to and encourage them and sometimes give you confidence when you don't have it. So I don't think there's a magic program for it, but I think it's a lot of, I think I got very lucky in having support of people and having people around me in the jobs that I were in or in my life who helped me and who supported me. And I started with a real passion for technology, and I think that grounds you when you come out of school.
And, for every single individual who's been on this program, and I've asked that question, every single one will say they started as a programmer. It is the foundation for everything we do. Yep. And I would guess that if we were to look at most men that are in high level positions within organizations, they also started as a programmer. It's the same. Learning to program and then taking a job as a programmer is as critical as learning tensor processing units today. It's foundational, and I don't really see how you can move up in any organization from a technology perspective if you don't have the basic understanding of programming and the problems that companies go through. Because it's not just learning to code in like Golang or Python or Java or C or COBOL, whatever it was. It's all about the process and the challenges. I mean, how could you possibly go and evangelize or talk to customers about observability if you didn't have that background, right?
Yep. You're absolutely right on. I think it's two things. It's understanding the technology, but it's also the logic and thought process that comes along with being a programmer and really understanding how that happens. I think it's a really interesting part of being a programmer, or when I was a math major, a long time ago when I was a math major, it's around the logic and the strategy that you have to use that comes along with it. So you're right. It's not just the tech, but it's the foundational skills that come along with the role that I think it's I didn't ever think about that there are a lot of people who started as programmers, but that's interesting if it's what you guys see as well.
Absolutely. There's another theme we see too, which you also spoke to, was the successful women that we speak to all say they loved what they were doing. Like, it was very interesting. They might have started something, someone pushed them to another thing, but once they landed, they knew that's where they were meant to be. Tracy says that about herself all the time. But the other thing is that you created a support system. You had mentors, you had people surrounding you, lifting you up that you would go to all the way to where you are now. And that's another theme that we hear a lot of is, nobody's an island. You can't do it all on your own. And having at whatever point you are in your career, some sort of, what did Trisha called it? Tracy, she called it your own board of directors.
Yes. I like to call it my front row.
Yeah, the front row, the board of directors, that we all need that group to keep us centered and focused, people we can go to that don't necessarily work with us, but can be that, voice to help support us. So yeah, those are themes we hear a lot around here. So it's really interesting.
And then you're not only on the board of the American Red Cross, and you're doing a very important job for Sumo, but you're also on the board for CloudBees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're a mentor to CloudBees at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah. And CloudBees, I've joined that board probably almost a year ago now. And it's it's amazing company, amazing technology built on Jenkins to provide enterprise level CDI. And so, as application development evolves, right, everything has changed so much. If I look back from when I started to what it looks like today is such a different world. Those foundational platforms, how do you deploy and how do you manage application development at scale is a really hard problem to solve. And so CloudBees has some amazing technology to do that. So, it's also got something that I think is really interesting in the space is that, building on open source. And I think that's something that you guys probably see a lot is this, how do you have open source and also a version of something that is for an enterprise and has support and, bug fixes and resources and enterprise level features? And how do you exist in both of those worlds, sort of a foot in each world? And so it's an interesting part of being on CloudBees board.
I understand that problem very well. Deploy Hub has an Ortelius product that's open source, and we have followed the CloudBees sort of model because it really works. It's sort of being a first responder, right? It's sort of like the American Red Cross. Open source can offer solutions to teams that may not have funding, but they really need to solve a problem. They may not have budget this year. And having an open source platform to start on and to be able to upgrade allows, a very fast on-ramp to solving problems. So I'm a huge fan of open source. I've been in open source communities since I helped start the Eclipse Foundation. So I love it personally. I'm very passionate about that. And I am passionate too about a first response. We need an American Red Cross for open source security, right? We need a first responder there. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about, observability and security and what's going on today and having to address the cybersecurity that in a recent number, it was 742 is the number of increases in cyber attacks over the course of the last 2 years, which is astronomical. How do we keep up with that?
Yeah. Well, and organizations' budgets aren't going up by 742%, and their staff isn't going up by 742%. So, that's where and there's lots of players. Cybersecurity is in so many ways an incredibly fragmented space, and it's I think as for the practitioners and customers that I talk to, it has felt for years like you're playing whack-a-mole, and it's hitting the bad actors down and putting in solutions where you need them to try to address the problems that you see and the threats that are changing every single day, because it's not like they're getting easier and less complex and less radical on the things that are happening in environments. For us here at Sumo Logic, we hear it from our customers all the time is, as we move more to cloud, as we move more to digital applications, as we engage with our customers and our partners and our employees, more and more of that moving to a cloud or digital world, the amount of data, the amount of vectors for bad actors to come in has risen exponentially. And so I think it's, for the customers that I talk to, it's about how do you stay ahead of them? And for us at Sumo, what we really focus on is how do we bring some of those worlds together? It's application observability and that lens, as well as looking at it from the security lens, because if you think about in traditional models in a fragmented world, those two data sources and sets of insights are fragmented. It's two different silos. And so what happens then is, I always say it's where the seams are that the cracks happen, right? And so you see something, and you've probably heard this and seen this lots from other people and over the years, is it's, hey, we saw an alert, but we didn't know it was an important alert. And so bringing those two views together so that you have an application view as well as a cybersecurity view, and having one set of data does a couple of things, gives you better insights because you're looking at it with two lenses and can look at it from two lenses. But it also helps you in the world where data is growing faster than budgets are growing. Because this digital exhaust, as we move to the cloud, it allows you to have a single source of data that you look at. And so rather than having two sets of data, you have a single source of data, which helps with your costs. And so it's a way to, get a better outcome for the organization, but also do it in a way that's really cost effective.
Now, Sumo runs primarily on AWS. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. We're entirely on AWS.
And how different is observability, that whole space, changing as companies move from more of a monolithic model, even though it may be containers, to a decoupled microservices environment? What does that look like for customers?
I think everybody, yes, as people are moving more and more to microservices, right? And I think that's this evolution that we're seeing. I think every customer is at a different place on their journey to that. I mean, I think there are frankly a set of, and even I'll say different customers, but it's even within the same customer, right? Even within the same customer. If I think of some of our big customers, they, have to exist in a world that they have a monolithic system that they still maintain, support, use is an important part. They have sort of that intermediate, and then the sort of the foot that they're putting in new microservices and this entire sort of digital born in a cloud situation. And so they've got to exist on everywhere along there. And I think that's the real challenge for our customers today and for everybody, is that it's not like you can start greenfield and say, hey, I'm going to go into this new environment and we're going to have an entire new way of developing applications and using and running applications. Nobody starts greenfield. Everybody's carrying tech debt with them. And so how do you do all of those things well and have tools that can support you along that journey, I think is what people are struggling with.
And, to bring the two together, it's a perfect storm for more security breaches, because we are in we are going through a change in terms of technology that we haven't seen in a very long time. I like to equate it from moving from the mainframe to the PC. Yeah. Which means that organizations are super busy trying to do this digital transformation. Oh, by the way, did you realize that security breaches are happening everywhere across from coding all the way to production? So it's kind of a perfect storm, and it's super hard for organizations to balance those two, because, as you said, they may have budgeted funds for putting together or pulling up a digital kind of transformation because they've got customers saying, we want things faster. We want we want better response times. We want new features. And at the same time, they've got to be figuring out what is in my open source. I have no idea what I'm consuming. So it is a tsunami. It's a tsunami that has come together in an interesting way, but it creates great opportunity.
That's right. Yeah.
Learn and change.
Tracy is always cup half full.
I gotta be. It's always been this way, though. It has always been this way. How is Sumo, or how are you guys looking at what the future is going to look like? And are you pivoting, or are you seeing a change in how your technology will serve your customers?
We have customers that, so I would say we are not necessarily pivoting. It's more trying to meet customers where they're at. We have customers who still have environments where their security operations team and their application teams are very different teams and use different tools and make independent decisions. And then we have a set of customers, especially those that are more cloud native and digital first, where they bring those together. The observability and security come together. And so we're trying to meet customers where they are, because everybody's somewhere different along the journey. I think we continue to think about not just features, but ease of use. And so having tools, there is no security practitioner that says, if I just had one more tool, I'd be secure. And so I think we recognize that. And so we are trying to make sure that it's not just having the tool, but having a tool that you can use, that you can configure, that gives you the insights that you need to really, gain insight into cloud infrastructures, gain insights into your security posture, gain insight into modern threats. And so, that's where we're really focused is how do we bring that together to make that something that works for customers, that it's not just one more tool. It's a tool that they, really feel like they're gaining value out of on either front.
And it's a shift in thinking too. One of our guests was Kamala Lardis. I think was her last name. Mm-hmm. She wrote a book recently on kind of the culture around digital transformation and the struggle of getting developers to start thinking in new ways and realizing that they have more on their plate than maybe just coding, which is hard right now. But don't you see that there's a pretty strong human factor in this process in really shifting the way we think about how we develop software, how we deliver software, and how we monitor software?
Yeah, you are absolutely right on. And that's interesting. I haven't checked out that book, but I will. That sounds really interesting because I think there's so much of it that's organizational shifts and cultural shifts on how we think about things, that for so many years, securing applications is an afterthought. It's like the application is developed and then thrown over the wall to a security team who then says, is it or isn't it secure? And how do we put the walls around it? And, so many things, it's the, move to cloud, move to digital, move to devices that has happened that puts so many more points of threats. And again, so many more seams in the system. It was, if you think about the old days when it was a big monolithic mainframe, it's sort of easy to put the wall around that. When you're in the world that we're in today, there is no wall and it's impossible to put the wall. And so you've got to think about how do you build it in from the ground up, because it's not something that can get thrown to a security team and put the wall around it. Now you've got to have the development team thinking about all of those different vectors in each of those different pieces that they're engaging with, developing, putting together, the pieces, whether it's something from open source that somebody's using, whether that's a microservice that somebody's bringing in, how do you put them together and have the pieces secure so that the entity is secure? But you've got to build it ground up as opposed to, sort of old model, throw it over the wall and put a box around it.
And then reinforce the seams.
And then reinforce the seams. Yeah. Exactly.
That's a really good analogy. I'm going to remember that. And that book, Kamala Lardis is her last name, and that book is called The Human Side of Digital Transformation. And she was really interesting to listen to because she talked about that particular struggle of this cultural shift that we're going through.
Yeah, it's, from an application developer, again, I haven't been a developer in a really long time, but it's not the part that from a developer, there's sort of different mindsets coming at it from a security mindset versus an application developer. And it's not part of what they typically want to do or think is the value that they bring. Is security is always, that's going to slow me down. And so I think that's got to be the mindset shift that happens, that, you can't move forward without security. And how do you make that core to application development today, that if we don't have that, it's going to be impossible for us to move forward.
And in a component-driven architecture or microservices, we are shifting from application teams to feature teams. And a feature team could be one or two people, to be quite honest. Yep. So one or two people could have a feature that's now treated like an application with its own workflow, its own road to deployment, and its own issues in, monitoring it in production. So from a developer perspective, it's no longer you're part of a bigger team. You may have a lot of responsibility for one feature set. So that's just one area that developers now have to start thinking differently about if they're writing services.
Yep. No, you're exactly right.
Well, and I've heard a lot back and forth, do some other security shows here at Tech.Strong, and we've actually run into the argument in security of, I can make, I'm going to block everything so everything is always secure. And the argument of, well, you just have to accept that stuff's going to happen and prepare to deal with it when it does. And I've watched that shift from we can block everything to we just need to prepare for the worst. Over the 3.5, 4 years that I've been part of Tech.Strong Group, I've seen it shift completely to, okay, we're kind of screwed. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do. We've got to have plan B and C and D ready to go because it's inevitable, right?
Yeah. And that is the whole theory about behind chaos engineering, right? It's back to the American Red Cross, the first responders. Mm-hmm. It's not about figuring out what occurred, it's figuring out how to respond to it as quickly as possible and then sort out what occurred later.
Yeah. I think I've seen the same evolution. And I think it's interesting. It's actually moved. It's something we at Sumo Logic have something, we were on t-shirts that says fix shit faster, because that's what we ultimately believe we let people do, whether it's application performance and uptime and reliability, or whether it's from a cybersecurity point of view. It's ultimately, there's a lot of things that help you with what's a dashboard, but it's ultimately what you really care about is getting something fixed and getting the application up and getting something secured. And so to do that, you need a foundation of, like for us, where we really differentiate is in our log analytics. And so, ultimately you can see something, but actually saying, what did it happen? Why did it happen? And how do I fix it? So that it doesn't happen again is where we really differentiate. But I think you're absolutely spot on. It's moved from, hey, we can do this. I think the other thing that was a myth that I think has changed a lot in the past, maybe 5 years, is, well, I wouldn't be a target anyway, right? Like that, only if I worked for the NSA or FBI or some really big company, Bank of America, maybe they're targets, but like, I'm just a fill in the blank, small store, doctor's office, whatever it is. And I think there was a time 5 years ago where there was lots of organizations that felt like I'm not a target. And I think we've moved into a world of, I'm thinking about shifts of, everybody recognizes now it doesn't have to be, first of all, you don't even have to be the target. You can just be a side effect of a bot or some kind of planned system that's coming after multiple, pinging IP addresses and just looking for gaps. So you don't even have to be a big organization. You don't have to be somebody that has something that you think is a valuable asset.
You could be a school district.
Right.
School districts.
And then you add the whole massive amount of remote workers. People aren't sitting in an office where they can secure everybody's stuff. You're like, now how do I deal with Jodi in her house and her computer connected to our system, right? That's added such another level of crazy to all of this as far as keeping things secure and teaching people, don't click on that.
Yeah, don't click on that download if you don't know who the email's from.
Wow. I think that's like the biggest thing you need to teach people of all ages.
Yes, it tends to happen to the younger and the older, and it's really, really horribly sad when it does, because it can really mess them up, and they're not equipped to fix it.
But you're right; it's of all ages. And just on that point, you talked about in your opening about AI, and I think that's, if you think about that, of don't click on that email. The quality and quantity of things like phishing emails, things like somewhere, are only going to get that much better, because I think something like a phishing email, it was always sort of easy to say, hey, will you send me $1 million check? I live in Ethiopia, and if you just send me $1 million, I'll send you $2 million. But it would have dozens of misspellings and dozens of things, like you could see the errors in it. And if you just think on a really basic level of, if you applied that same concept, but shot it through an AI tool to generate that same email, all of a sudden, some of those things that we're used to saying, oh, that's an easy flag, probably get resolved. And so it's a really basic thing to think about, that example, but that is going to only make cybersecurity practitioners' jobs harder.
I got one this weekend, and my husband spent his entire career in security, and we stopped for a second because it was so good and went, wait a minute, it was on my phone. And then we went, looked at it in my email, my PC, and he's taught me how to look in all the lines and be like, yeah, that's not real. But boy, at first glance, and believe me, I am trained. I have 5,000 character double passwords for everything, which sucks, by the way. But I'm pretty good at noting it. And I stopped and went, look at this. And he was like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
So
AI can solve us. It can help us on both sides. He can make us look more professional. Thank God for Grammarly. I don't really consider it AI, but I don't know what I'd do without it. But at the same time, we can start using AI to do better pattern matching on these types of problems, and in all levels of security, whether it be from the beginning in pen testing, or we start doing a better job of interrogating SBOMs and making containers skinnier because we're not pulling in everything. So that's why I kind of started that conversation with saying we maybe should be learning more about Tensor, because this kind of technology will get us out of the hole that we're finding ourselves in. And there may be bad things about AI, but there's going to be a lot of really, really good things. And I think we're going to see a lot of good things in this particular area in the future. It is one way for us to get out of the problem. And tools like Sumo, which has so much data that it's collecting. And I always have this conversation. I preach it all the time. We can't be smarter unless we have data, right? I mean, without the data.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think you're absolutely right. If you don't have the foundation of data, for example, there's lots of organizations who maybe get samples of data, right? But samples of data is not the data. And so, when you need to do the forensics and retrace steps and figure out exactly how things happen, if your data sample isn't the sample when you needed it, you're in a really bad situation. So fundamentally, it starts with collecting the right data. You're absolutely right on. And then putting the analytics over that data so that you can actually access it in real time. And that it's not, hey, I've got to sort through this. Hold on, this is going to take 10 hours to run. And so, that's where we put a lot of focus on how do you do that? How do you do it at scale? How do you do it in a cost-effective way? For customers. So you're spot on.
And how do you start building those ML workflows so it can learn? It can start learning on its own. It's a really fascinating area. And in terms of DevOps, production control, whatever you want to call it, I feel we have the biggest opportunity in this area if we can centralize the data, if we can get the data. Because it can't be a sample, because the sample is going to be old in 2 days. A new thing happened, and that sample didn't have it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
We are in a very fast world right now, and everybody's got to be on their toes. And, I want to ask you something about a lot of companies are afraid of failing fast. Talk to us a little bit, because I know that in the Sumo world, failing fast is something that is okay, especially if you have observability tooling so you can see what happens. I can remember when I was working at a financial company, I will not say the name because it's not a good story. We had a pretty bad production outage, and we were all drug into a meeting, and they really wanted to know the root cause analysis. And I was like, and why it happened. And I just was waving my hands. I was like, I did it. Let me go fix it instead of sitting in here in this stupid meeting. It helps us none to be sitting in a meeting. Why don't we do that after the fact? Surprised I was a consultant. Surprised I didn't get chased out of the place. But they were like, okay, go fix it. But failing fast should be okay. We should trust our teams to be able to try new things and push the envelope and fail fast and have the support of upper management to do so.
Yeah. I think it's something, I think we try to embrace that as a culture, but I think you're even talking more broadly of how do you build that into the culture of organizations today, kind of to our earlier conversation, it's not an if, but a when something happens. And so if you adapt that mindset, it's not an if, but a when, then it's really, okay, how do I respond as quickly as possible? How do I, put the guardrails in? And so even if it's from an app development standpoint, how do you put the guardrails in that you can try things, fail fast, learn, iterate. And just like application development is now such an iterative process instead of a monolithic process, it's kind of the same mindset, but from a cultural standpoint. And so it's bringing the culture to where the technology already is in so many ways.
Yes, the culture and the technology have to marry up here really soon. We really need it. We need to be able to fail fast. We need to be thinking about the practices of chaos engineering. And we need to really get smart about what's happening in our DevOps pipelines and start thinking about AI ways to solve these problems and do some machine learning around data and how do we gather it.
Yeah, something that I say a lot in our organization is AI makes cybersecurity more of a team sport. And if you think about organizations today, every organization tries to solve this cybersecurity problem on their own. And so, and that certainly you've got to worry about your organization. If you're a CISO of a big bank or something, you've got to solve that problem for your organization. That's your responsibility. But bad actors are working together. Bad actors, are leveraging what each other are doing to get smarter every day. And I think AI is going to help us make cybersecurity, the defensive posture, much more of a team sport of getting smarter together, learning faster together, getting insights from each other, and putting us into a position that we can collectively defend better because we will get both the insights and the responses shared much more rapidly because of AI.
Yeah, I think we all I panic about AI. I'm like, oh my God, all the things that people are doing, because you just hear the negative, right? But that's a great way to think about it, in that AI might make security issues and everything happen more quickly, but it can also give us the opportunity to fix it faster too, right? It goes both ways. So that makes me feel better.
I think
about using it as quickly to stomp something as you do to create something. That's really a true statement. So that makes sense. And I know it's probably common sense, but to me, it was kind of like,
Yeah, the more you study or at least read up on things like what biopharma is doing, what AI is doing to change the medical world.
Amazing.
Just a cancer screening test. You go in and get your mammogram, and AI is going to change the results. It's going to be able to see a potential problem way before the human eye can, way before. And that's going to be coming really, really fast. Maybe by next year, we'll all be getting mammograms using AI, right?
Well, and one of the major universities just used an AI tool to create an antibiotic against a strain of something that was resistant. And when they were done and they were testing it on mice on their skin, not in their bodies, they found out that not only did it kill the antibiotic resistant germ, it didn't kill all the other normal stuff. Because, right, when you take an antibiotic, they're like, eat yogurt, take other supplements, because it's killing everything, not just the bad thing. This actually pinpointed what it was and just zapped it and left all the other stuff alone. And I thought, wow, that is a game changer. My father ended up passing away because he developed an antibiotic resistant strain of a disease. And, eventually they didn't work anymore. And so I think that's an amazing thing when you think about what it can be used for good.
And we can do the same thing with security threats.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're getting there. it's going to happen. I believe in it. So today's mantra is Tensor. Go learn about TPUs. It's something we should learn as technologists, male or female for that matter.
So, Lynne, is there anything you're working on work related or non-work related that you're excited about that's coming up in your world that you want to talk about?
I'm excited about lots of things. I mean, for us, we are going on the next phase of our journey as a company, as an organization. And so for us, that it becomes all about refocusing, doubling down on the things that we really are differentiated in providing to our customers and bringing that forward to our customers. So I continue to be excited about that. I think there are, very few, if any, companies outside of us that can provide the solutions that we provide, and really, again, let people fix things faster, not just collect logs for the sake of logs, not just offer analytics for the sake of analytics, but really with a goal of fixing things faster. So I'm excited on that on a work standpoint. I think that we have just so much that we can do. It's the tip of the iceberg here. And I'm excited for what the future holds that. Personally, I am excited because I'm going to Mexico next week.
Yay!
So, I am taking a vacation, which is fantastic. And in addition to that, I just got a brand new e-bike. So
neat.
Yeah. So a couple of fun things on a personal level that I am excited about. The e-bikes are amazing. If you guys haven't, I had never ridden an e-bike. Oh my gosh, they are absolutely amazing. And I like to ride bikes, but gosh, I live in Denver, Colorado now. Some of the hills are.
I live in Denver too.
No way.
You're right. The hills will get you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I'll be able to keep up with my husband more.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. Believe it or not, we've blown through our time here. We really appreciated having you, getting to meet you and learn all about Sumo. One of my favorite stress toys I got from one of your folks we work with was my little Sumo guy, and one of my dogs ate it. And I was so sad.
I bet Lynne could fix you up on that.
I bet we can hook you up with another one.
I need another one. It was like the perfect stress thing. And it's super cute. I just have to hide him from the dogs. But anyway, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And everybody, stay tuned. We've got a lot more fun Tech Strong content coming. There he is. Yeah, I need a little guy with it. Yeah, that's the one I had. So that's what I need. They're the best. Thanks for sticking with us for another episode of Tech Strong Women. We will be back in a couple weeks, so be sure and join us then. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lynne. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.